so far removed from the idea of America and its minarchism written in the United States Constitution, where we have to bring her back to where she belongs. Thank you for listening to this episode of Chasing Life, Liberty, and Minarchy. On this wonderful day in the best country in the nation, regardless of what's going on amongst us, I firmly believe our Creator has put these obstacles in front of us to show us the wretchedness that is within our country. I want to believe that every American respects property rights. I hold my fellow United Statians to another level because we have held on to a semblance of liberty and freedom in this country, even through the darkest of times in this country. Ladies and gentlemen, we are upon another one of those dark times in our country. And I'm not talking about the actions of the federal government. Because let's be honest, right? And we know, as a minarchist, that the force of the state should only be retaliatory. Only be retaliatory. Now, I'm not going to disparage a group of people. I'm not going to talk bad about them. But what I do want to say is that when people don't respect self-ownership, which is the pinnacle of property rights, you might not like the outcome. You may not like the outcome of the result of you violating someone's self-ownership. No matter which way you slice it. I don't want to get into the intricacies of what ICE has been doing, but what I will tell you is everything they have done so far has been in retaliatory force. All of it. All of it is retaliatory because they are protecting what? Their self-ownership. From people that did not belong in places they were at. The side of the road is not the place you invoke arbitrarship. That's the courtroom, that's the commission dais, that's the halls of Congress. That's where you invoke that arbitrarship, but not on a public sidewalk or public road. I want people to understand there is laws against this stuff. Those laws passed are to protect self-ownership of the people enforcing the law, Title 40, right? Title 40, right? I want people to understand this individual that has that decided to get in the middle of that situation yesterday was unlawful by default. You interfered with law enforcement. He decided to put, I don't care, people try to play the appeal to authority. He was a nurse for veterans. Damn all of that. This boils down to the fact that he interfered with law enforcement. And the fact that he had a firearm on him escalated the situation, lawful or unlawful. Because again, under Title 40, my friends, federal law enforcement, they have all authority to disarm you if you're perceived to be a threat, even on a public sidewalk. Especially now during this time. But I'm not going to get preachy on that because we got a format to get to. But I just want to put this out here. I don't care how you feel about ICE. When you step in and you threaten the self-ownership of someone, you are not going to like the outcome. I don't care if it's ICE doing his job or a civilian on the corner. You infringe on that person's self-ownership. You may not like the outcome. This is why we have castle doctrine. This is why we have stand your ground. We shouldn't even have to have those laws, to be honest. Because if people respected property rights, especially self-ownership, you know not to cross that line. You know, those of us that are Gen X, you cross that line into someone's self-ownership, you got shots to the face. And I'm not talking about Patron or tequila. You got shots right to your face. When you become adults, it becomes a little bit of a different game. They start throwing bullets at you. And hope, and you better hope you gotta dodge them, because if you catch them, you ain't gonna violate another person's self-autonomy or their self-ownership. This all boils down to property rights. You do not have a right as a civilian or anybody to impose on someone's self-ownership. You don't have that right. And if you think you do, show me who gave you that authority. Show me where you get that authority from. Because I'm going to tell you, you're not going to find it. It's something you made up in your head. It is something you made up in your head. It doesn't make you virtuous. It makes you a vigilante. It makes you lawless scum. It's what it makes you. I need to cut out the lawlessness. Because what's going to end up happening is what you don't want to happen. And we know the man that sits in the White House, the head man of the executive branch, look, he already showed y'all. He showed y'all that he will pull up and steal you. He already told you he can do it. He already told you he can pull up and snatch your wig. Don't make him push that button. Because you're not going to fault MAGA. You're not going to fault the administration. You're not going to fault ICE. You're going to fault yourselves for setting off a revolt in the streets that's not even necessary. It's going to be your fault that the federal government becomes an overarching statist organization. I don't want it. But what y'all fighting for in those streets is exactly that. You're fighting for the state to get in control of your life, to impede and stomp on your rights at every turn because you twitched a finger, even giving them the green light to shoot you, even if you look funny. This is where we are, and this is dangerous. This is a dangerous place to be right now because you idiots want to jump in the middle of law enforcement actions because of the lies you've been told. No single U.S. citizen or citizen of the state they're in should be dying in the streets. There was a point in time we respected law and order to its core. These statists don't respect it. They never have respected the rule of law. Thought I needed to say that out loud. Because the closer they slide into anarchy, this is key. The closer they slide into anarchy is the very, very easiest way to backdoor them with minarchy. It's the exact backdoor. Because these people are going to need a semblance of order, but they're not going to like the order that minarchy brings. Because to them, it'll still be anarchy. And the people and the liberty defenders of this country are going to do what they do. Hmm? Anyway, listen, guys. Welcome back to the Shield of Liberty. We've spent this series. This is number 5 of 8. We're kind of rolling kind of long. You know, we do have previous episodes of Minarchy. We have What is Minarchy? Started in the summer. 8 episodes. We also have The Path to Minarchy through Revolution or Incrementalism. We have that series. I can't remember one in between. I've done 3 or 4 series. I can't remember the names. It's I can't remember all everything that I do. And I say I do remember some things, the key things. But anyway, you can go back and check out the Chasing Life, Liberty, and Minarchy series. Check it out. It's on Sundays, 8 p.m. live. Shout out to everybody that's listening on the broadcast airwaves, on the internet, on the Rumble, on the YouTubes, on the Instagrams, the Facebooks, all that. I appreciate you. Remember, check out the Patreon. Make sure you do that. And all that stuff. And some of you that have been around for a minute, funny story. I was sitting here writing a show and I had to go into my plethora of PDF documents. And I'm telling you, if I showed you the hard drive I have all these PDFs on when we're talking about liberty and different court cases, I'm going to tell you it's about a 20 terabyte drive. 20 terabyte. I have, and it's almost full of documents from the statutes at large to all the southern recorders are on PDF on this thing, right? Great Lakes recorder. Those that don't know what the recorders are, that is the log. It's called the logbook for all court cases in certain districts. So I have like 3 different sets of PDFs of all the court cases in the court reporters, right? Okay, California. I said all the southern first, southern second, southern third, got all those. Great Lakes recorder, got all those, right? But I'm flipping through here, right? And something reminded me, popped up and reminded me that I needed to pay for a domain. Popped up on my screen. Pay for a domain? What domain? Well, apparently 5 years ago, I bought the domain, the Ninth Amendment Project.org. Didn't even, I forgot about the damn thing. I'm like, wait a minute. Oh God, have mercy! I spent I spent $370 for a domain and I never used it. Oh boy, shit, fire and bean sauce. So my daughter, she asks me, what are you doing? What are you doing, Dad? I'm like, I'm just sitting here getting ready, writing the show for the night, blah, 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 blah. And then she seen it pop up on my screen and she was like, Dad, I thought you were supposed to start that. I thought I was supposed to start it too. I'm like, shit, fire. I guess I need to do something with it because it expires in February. You know what my daughter did? She said, Dad, everything you do for us, everything you do for all of us, you know what? Here's a extra late Christmas present. She paid for the domain for 10 years for me. 10 years. I'm like, holy smokes. The cost was cheaper. She paid more for 10 years than I did for 5. I'm like, oh my God. But she bought the domain for me. So guess what we're gonna be working on? Mm-hmm. Yep. Add more sticks to the fire. I mean, I might as well use it at this point. But that's the think tank. The think tank I was talking about doing, and I think we need it now more than ever, right? So blessings to my daughter for doing that. I love her to death. Hope God keeps her safe out there on the open seas when she is out there all the time. Because we got some plumb idiots out here in these streets, man. So, but anyway, Ninth Amendment Project.org is going to be coming real soon. We got to get this think tank together. Everybody is welcome to participate because, we have to talk about the unenumerated rights that we do have, right? And how the court steps on them where people ignore them. And this is something we need to, as minarchists, right? We need to get on board with that because everything we hold dear, for me personally as a minarchist, is in the Ninth Amendment. Everything, right? We talked about that with COVID, right? COVID, all the economic liberty is a Ninth Amendment. We can put that under Ninth Amendment rights, right? Medical freedom, right? Even though it's not, because you got to understand, right? Your rights are enumerated in the Constitution, in the Bill of Rights, but that Ninth Amendment is very important because the rights, right? The rights that, that are unspoken or that are unenumerated, right, are reserved to who? The people, right? That's where we need to be. But anyway, we got to kick this thing. I talk too much. I talk too much. And we'll get through this episode, right? But I do want to say I want to thank y'all and all that good stuff. Make sure y'all share and subscribe and all that stuff. Listen, we've spent the last probably what 5. This is episode 5. Yeah, episode 5. Building a fortress, right? A minimal state military that is ethically funded and defensively minded. But now that we've built that, we have to address the efficiency gap, right? Those of you that were here in episode 1, right? We established that the state must hold a monopoly on the authority to use force, right? This is what prevents warring gangs and ensures that defense is conducted under a unified rule of law. However, we are falling into a dangerous logical trap with this, right? We assume that because the state has the authority to defend us, the state must also be the owner of the factories, the employer of the mechanics, and the operator of the logistics. Now, if we look, right, under the current United States military industrial complex, right? It is the largest centrally planned economy in human history. These are facts. It's undeniable, right? We see it all the time, right? And it is now, for all intents and purposes, let's call it what it is, right? It's military socialism, right? It is a closed loop of 5 or 6 prime contractors who operate more like government agencies than private businesses, right? They don't compete for your dollar, they lobby for your tax cent. Let me repeat that again. These companies like Raytheon and Lockheed Martin, right? Just to name a couple. I mean, there's more. Halliburton, Blackwater, right? You know the peoples, right? They're not competing for your dollar to donate to them. They are lobbying to Congress for your tax cent, right? This is where you've heard me say before. Those you've been on TikTok and in the lives I've been in, et cetera, right? You hear it all the time uh, from the three of us. If you're around us, right, that it's big money, big corporations lobbying the two biggest political parties, which are also nonprofit organizations, to get onto the ballot. And then they pass law for them, but not you. Y'all have heard that before. Y'all have heard it. Y'all have heard that spiel, something similar to that before, right? I mean, it's all the time. Think about the defense contractors. And if you go look at the NDAA, right? And you look at the money that is specifically for contractors, right? Who gets all that money? It ain't the itty bitty 1-2 man operation. It's the Raytheon, right? It's the Lockheed. It's the Halliburton, right? I want y'all to hear what I'm saying. They send their people to Congress after they've elected the person and donated money to the person to ask them to pass law for these corporations. See, so that's what it goes back, right? Again, right? They're not competing, coming to your door, asking for a donation for your dollar. They're going to Congress to ask for your money through the tax cent. Hmm? I mean, think about it. Where do you think government grant money comes from? Because the government is not a for-profit organization. It's a nonprofit, right? Grants are your tax dollars, your tax cent. These contracts are your tax cent, right? Let me make it simpler. Let me make it a little bit simpler for you, right? On the local level, right? On the local level, you have county roads. How are those county roads funded? Through the road tax or your gas excise tax, right? Contractors, they don't come to you to say, "Hey, would you donate $10 for to us so we can pave your major county road, all 26 miles of it?" No, 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 no. They don't ask for your dollar. They go to the board of commissioners. They go to the board of commissioners in your county and say, "Hey, we're going to put in a bid to pave your roads when you make it open." And they compete for your tax cent. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it is military socialism. Mm? By definition, right? But in this episode, we're going to talk about the privateers. As you see, the privateers, the outsourcing defense to the market, right? We're going to explore how to keep the authority of the state while unleashing the efficiency of the market. Okay. I'm going to show how to take the gears from our logo that you see the logo, right? The gears from the logo and oil them with the power of competition. So make sure you're sharing this, all that good stuff, do the things, recommend all that. And if you have a chance, if you're on iPhone, check out the ratings on this. Rate the show. If you're on Spotify, do the same thing. You're on Rumble, do the same thing. I greatly appreciate it. We can get this thing boosted in the algorithm a little bit, while we do this, right? But we're going to talk about breaking this, what I've called the cost plus cult, right? The Pentagon versus the market, right? Now let's understand, right? Why the current system is failing, right? Because the primary tool, okay, of the military industrial complex is the cost plus contract, right? Now, see, under this cost plus contract, the government tells a company like Boeing, or again like Lockheed or Raytheon, well, not necessarily Raytheon, but Boeing and Lockheed, right? Because they build our jets, right? Build us this jet. They'll tell them, build us this jet, and we'll reimburse you for every dollar it cost you to build it. And then we will give you an extra 10% on top as your profit. Hmm. Hmm. Diabolical, isn't it? Quite diabolical. Now, stop and think about the incentives in that, right? If you are a CEO of one of these companies and your profit is a percentage of your cost, you are incentivized to make the project as expensive as possible, wouldn't you? Sounds familiar, doesn't it, guys? If you know anything about but government budgets, sounds pretty familiar. Hmm. So it's kind of funny, right? Because think about it. If you save money, you lose profit, right? This is why we see a $90,000 bag of bushings and a $1.7 trillion fighter program, right? That are decades behind schedule, right? There is no price signal because there is no competition, right? There's no competition because they're, again, right? They're awarding these contracts only, right? Only to these companies, and they're not competing with each other, right? Now, if we break this down into the minimal state, right? We abolished the prime contractor status, like the Lockheeds, et cetera, and we moved into a fixed priced, or let's say I would call a fixed price milestone based contracting, right? The government sets the requirement. We need a drone that can stay airborne for 48 hours and intercept cruise missiles. The price, $100,000 a unit. The first company to pass the test gets the contract. That should be. So that's just simple without the nuance, right? Very simple. Now, this would actually shift, right, the risk from the taxpayer to the company. Because if the company fails, they go bankrupt, not our treasury, right? This would immediately invite Silicon Valley startups and hungry tech firms to compete with the legacy dinosaurs of the military industrial complex. When companies have to risk their own capital to innovate, you get better technology in half the time for a fraction of the cost. Think about that. Now, let's get into, I would say, the most radical tool of our little minarchist toolkit, right? The one that is literally written into the United States Constitution, the letters of marque and reprisal. A lot of people do not understand this. A lot of people don't understand this, right? But let's go here a second, right? Because the letters of marque and reprisal is in Article 1, Section 8, Clause 11, right? Yeah, this is the hidden gem, right? And this is where I would say we could derive our power from, right? Those of you that do have your pocket constitutions handy, I beg you to go take a look at Article 1, Section 8, Clause 11, right? Because that particular clause, right, says to declare war, right? Because we talk about, right, we're talking about levying war against the enemies with the treason, right? What's Article 1, Section 8, Clause 1 says to declare war, grant letters of marque and reprisal, and make rules concerning captures on land and water. Now, please understand where this comes from, right? This this comes from God. We're talking like before 1787, right? And it's important for me to repeat this history behind the letters of marque and reprisal clause in the Constitution, right? Because the word, let's talk etymology a second, right? The word marquis, okay, is the French equivalent of reprisal, right? And the original understanding, right, of reprisal is a seizure of property or sometimes persons of a foreign state as redress for an injury committed by that state. Okay. Thus, when they wrote marque and reprisal, it's best understood as a single phrase, right? And this comes from, and I don't want to go that far back. I want to stay current in the country, right? Because now Sir William Blackstone, right, even said that these words are basically synonymous, right? And he also wrote that the power to issue such letters was plainly derived from the power to make war, that the issuance of those letters would generally end in a formal denunciation of war. Now, let's go back to the Revolutionary War, right? Tea Party, all that, right? The Continental Congress did grant letters of marque and reprisal, and those privateers, they seized $10 million in British goods, right? Obviously hurting British commerce, right? And giving the leg up to the colonists, our forefathers and children, the eventual victory, right? Now, under the Articles of Confederation, right, Congress was empowered to grant these letters in time of peace, but only with the consent of 9 states in this regard, right? Now, when we come forward and we talk about the Constitutional Convention and the delegates basically saying that Congress has the power to declare war, right? Right? James Madison proposed a list of additional powers to be vested in Congress, right? And this was to grant the letters of marque and reprisal. You see where I'm going, right? Hope y'all understand, y'all tracking where I'm going with this, right? Now, after we gained our independence, right? And we started warring with France in like I think it's 1797, 1798. We started warring with France a little bit, right? And Congress, right? They authorized the president. Yeah, I guess, it's complicated, but I'll just say this: Congress and the president issued letters of marque and reprisal to privateers, and the privateers did some damage, right? Because in that regard, the United States government, right, had limited themselves to a defensive war. Defensive war, right? Y'all picking it up now, right? This is why this clause in the Constitution is so important, right? They did the same thing, right? Congress issued letters of marque and reprisal to privateers during the War of 1812, right? Now, those of you that may be confused, let's understand, right? When we go back to the last episode, right? The citizens are the armed forces, and the government has to come to us and ask us if we want to go to war with a nation, right? And if we do, that said government needs to issue a letters of marque and reprisal. This is why this is so important when we're talking about the defensive posture of the United States, in this context, the United States, right? Because if the citizens are the military, right, the government has to ask the people if they want to go fight this country. And if they say no, it's a no. If they do, they issue the letters of marque and reprisal. Think about that. Because technically speaking, right, in this context, the people, the citizens, are the privateers. We are the privateers, right? And the state has empowered us, right, per se, even though we have the power, but they said, hey, this is official on paper. This is how it's going down. We do our thing, right? Right? That's where we are. So again, they did that in 1812. So I wanted to go there a second, right? And there's been other talks about the letters of marque and reprisal, 9/11, the Somali piracy, things of that nature. Right? But I'm not going to get into that. But I brought that up on purpose because that is how, right? That is how we would be able to be, in conjunction with the state to fight a war with permission, right? Now, let's break now that we understand what that clause in the Constitution means, right? Let's roll forward a little bit, right? Because most people that just heard what I said and they hear privateer, they think it's like some sort of pirate, right? No, no, right? Historically, right, privateers were the market's answer to naval defense, right? And in the minimal state that we were creating here, right, we recognize that the state doesn't need to own every boat to keep the sea lane safe, right? Think about it. Currently, the United States Navy spends millions of dollars per day to keep a destroyer in the Red Sea to swat down $2,000 drones, right? I mean, what's the point, right? What is the actual point, right? $1 million a day to keep a destroyer in the Red Sea to shoot down $2,000 drones. It's just absurdity to me. And then you have to be a destroyer. It could be a frigate, right? It could be a frigate, but you get the point, right? Now, the letters of marquise clause, right, in the Constitution, if we were to incorporate something into, I mean, again, the Constitution's not going away, and the Constitution is perfect. We just need to strip some things down. We'll get into that later, right? But a letter of marque allows the state, watch this, to deputize private entities to perform specific defensive or retaliatory tasks. Imagine, right, a shipping lane plagued by piracy. Instead of a massive bureaucratic naval deployment, the state issues a letter of marque to a private maritime security firm. And these firms are paid by insurance consortia, right? Or by the recovery of stolen assets. Now, the benefits of this are twofold, right? One, you get efficiency, right? Because the privateers don't carry the massive overhead of a state military. They are lean, mission focused, and only get paid when the job is done. And then there's accountability, right? Because the privateer operates under a contract. If they violate the laws of war or exceed their mandate, their contract is voided and they are prosecuted as criminals. Unlike a government agency, which can hide behind sovereign immunity, a private firm is legally and financially liable for its mistakes in this case. All right. Now, we're rolling to the end here. I hope y'all are enjoying yourselves, all that good stuff, taking notes. If not, you can rewind back and you can do the things, listen to it again, clip your favorite part, put it on your social media, or just put the whole thing on social media. So let's we have to dismantle the tail of the military industrial complex, right? And we have to talk about the logistics revolution that has to happen, right? Now, military terms, we talk about the tooth, right? The combat soldiers, and the tail end, which is the logistics, the HR, the maintenance, right? Now, currently, the U.S. military has one of the largest logistics, HR, maintenance in history, right? Let's think about this a minute, right? For every soldier holding a rifle, there is 10 people, logistics, HR, and maintenance, processing paperwork, cooking meals, or running government-owned grocery stores. Think about that, right? This is a massive waste of human capital, right? Now, let's compare that to what a minarchist military would look like, right? We would outsource the tail completely. Private firms, right? There's no reason, right? There's no reason for a government employee to be managing the payroll of the military or fixing a truck, right? These are functions the private sector already performs with surgical precision every day, right? Now, by outsourcing logistics, maintenance, and administrative support to private firms through competitive bidding, we do three things. We force concentration, right? Economic growth and transparency, right? I mean, transparency piece is the biggest thing, right? Because I mean, think about it. Private contractors in this case, or private contracts have clear terms and audits. Or Pentagon, when have they ever passed an audit? When have they ever passed an audit? Right? By moving these functions to the market, we get to see where every dollar is going. Right? when it comes to the economic growth part, right? We move those billions of dollars from a closed government loop into the actual economy, creating jobs in the private sector, right? And obviously, forced concentration, in itself, right, is it basically ensures that every person in a military uniform is combat ready professional, not a middle manager, right? Think about that a second. Now, we have to talk about the safeguard, right? The market accountability piece and all this, right? Because some people will say the final objection to this will always be, but what if the company start a war just to make money, right? It's again, right? We see that now with the Blackwaters and the Halliburtons, right? The mercenary fear that we see, right? But the reality is that the current system is what incentivizes war, right? The military industrial complex needs instability to justify its trillion-dollar budgets. A private firm, however, is bound by a contract and the law, right? And as we talked about in our model, the state still retains sole authority to declare war and set rules of engagement. But a private contractor cannot go to war on their own. They can only fulfill a contract for defense. Right? Furthermore, the market provides a death penalty that the government can't. If a government department fails, they usually get an increased budget next year to fix the problem. If a private defense firm fails a mission or commits an atrocity, they go bankrupt. Their reputation is destroyed and their assets are liquidated. Now, by using the market, we aren't losing control. We're gaining a level of accountability that the current too big to fail, right, Pentagon, right, cannot dream of. The shield, remember the shield from our logo, is held by the state, but the gears are maintained by who? The people, right? I'm glad you hung out this evening. Got a little bit of knowledge in your system, right? As we wrap up episode number 5, right? Look at that shield on your screen one more time for me, right? The gears in the center are the most important part. They represent the how. The how. They represent the how, right? In a maximalist state, which kind of what we have now in the United States currently, those gears are frozen by bureaucracy and rust. But in our minimal state, we let the market turn them, right? We don't need to choose between being safe and being free. We can use the very tools of freedom, which is competition, innovation, and private property, to build the most lethal defense system the world has ever seen. I want to thank y'all for joining me this evening. In our next episode, we're going to have a premonition. We're going to leave the physical world behind and enter the digital frontier. Episode 6, Cyber Shields and Digital Borders. How does a minimal state protect you from an enemy that moves at the speed of light? I want y'all to make sure you love your neighbors, love your family, love yourself, ultimately. Until next time, stay free, love liberty, and scream it to the top of your lungs. Until next time, y'all. Peace and love.